Hey everybody, hope you all are doing well and welcome back to Michael's Matters. Now, of course, as many of you know, but also, there's a lot of new subscribers out there joining us lately. Thank you, by the way. But either way, I am Michael, and today we are talking about one aspect of the Social Security benefits. So that could be for folks who are on Social Security Retirement, Social Security Disability SSDI, as well as Social Security survivors, and really all the different forms of Social Security benefits. It is one of the most important aspects of the program, but understandably, it's easy to shy away from, which is Social Security survivors' benefits, and really talking about what happens to the survivor's spouse's Social Security benefits when the other spouse dies. Now, before we get to the video, if you like these videos, if you find them interesting or you find them helpful, or hey, if you find them useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe because it really does help the channel to grow. And again, thank you for that. But also because you get notifications when our newest videos come out. All right, now, let's get down to the video. So let's first start by talking about what and the why of Social Security survivors' benefits. And the root of it really kind of goes all the way back to the very beginning of Social Security's existence. It's raison d'etre. I mean, even if you look at the official name of the program, it's not actually Social Security. The SSA, or the Social Security Administration, is just the organization that administers all these benefits. So they administer everything. But the real name for it is the Federal Old Age Survivors and Disability Insurance, or OASDI. This is why when we get annual reports from Social Security about how well, or I guess to that matter, how not so well it's doing, it's called the Annual Report of the Board of Trustees of the Federal Old Age and Survivors Insurance and Federal Disability Insurance Trust Fund. It's quite a mouthful. So I think Social Security has a nice, concise ring to it. And the whole reason for the existence of the program was because prior to 1935, when the first Social Security Act was signed by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, it was meant to ensure that older Americans or people who were disabled had something to fall back on and not live basically in abject poverty like they had done really since the beginning of the U.S. I mean, back to the Pilgrims, basically. Now, aside from the altruistic kind of right thing to do about it attitude, which it really was, it was the right thing to do, FDR had some very practical reasons for creating the Social Security Administration. One, it potentially frees up healthy, young, working Americans from having to fully support their older family members so that they can be more productive and they can make more money and they can even pay more taxes. But also provided a big incentive to do the hard, dirty, and really dangerous work that FDR was proposing during the age of his brand new deal. So without getting too much farther into the history about Social Security, maybe we'll save that for another video here. But basically, it was meant to provide a level of financial security for Americans for when they could no longer work and for their spouses and their children. Now, according to the most recent 2022 Annual Statistical Supplemental to the Social Security Bulletin, say that 5 times fast, it says that in total, the program right now has around 65.2 million people receiving Social Security benefits. And, quote, approximately 77% were retired workers and their spouses and their children, and 9% are survivors of deceased workers. So that would mean that currently there are about 5.9 million folks out there across the country who are receiving Social Security survivors benefits. To put an even finer point on how important survivors benefits could be for somebody, there is a sweet old lady out here in the great state of California named Edie Ciccarelli, who is the oldest living person in the United States. She was born in 1908 and is now 115 years old. Well done, Edie. But more to my point is that when she was 28, that's when Social Security passed in 1935. It also means that she started collecting Social Security benefits at the age of 65 in 1973 during the Nixon administration. So she's been collecting Social Security basically for the last 50 years, and presumably survivors benefits since 1990, so 33 years since her husband passed away. So if we do some just real quick math on that, if we calculate what this means for benefits from today moving forward, and we know that the average Social Security survivors benefit check for non-widowed survivors is $1,711.49 in 2023. Multiply that out for the year, $20,537.88, and let's say everyone gets a 3% COLA on average for the next 50 years. We'll put that in the calculator, and that comes out to $2,437,166, and it's probably actually more. So needless to say, survivors benefits have been important to Edie. They're going to be important to us, and they really represent a big portion of most of our financial security into our golden years. So how does Social Security survivors benefits work? Well, depending on the circumstances, the surviving spouse of a Medicare benefits eligible person can receive up to 100% of the late spouse's Social Security benefits. The amount, again, will rely on a couple of things. One, how long the working spouse had worked. Two, how much they paid into the Social Security benefits program via the payroll taxes. And by that I mean how much tax came out of their paychecks. And finally, when they actually decided to retire. Remember, one of the biggest determinants of how much Social Security benefits anybody is able to get is based off when they retire. Because, for example, right now, for most of the people who are going to retire in the near, and I guess for that matter, even in the distant future, the full retirement age, or the FRA, is at 67 years old, which is when Social Security will give you your full 100% Social Security benefits. But if someone does retire early, at the earliest, let's say 62, they may end up only getting around 70% of those full Social Security benefits. Inversely, if someone does retire at 70, well, they actually get more. So they can get up to 130% of that FRA amount. So by waiting, they get paid a little bit more. That also means that if you are married to someone who maybe wants to take Social Security benefits early, and also you may be the surviving beneficiary, maybe encourage them to wait till 70. I hope my wife's not listening to this. Just kidding, dear. But whichever a person decides to do, these decisions will carry over and affect how much Social Security survivors benefit the surviving spouse ends up getting. So who is generally eligible for Social Security survivors benefits? Well, let's talk about the basics. First, a person would need to be married to a person who is eligible for Social Security benefits. That means that they have contributed to the Social Security program for generally 40 quarters or 10 years. Then one spouse would need to decease. For a spouse who has been widowed, for the most part, they need to be at least 60 years old or older, although there are exceptions for folks who are as young as 50 years old, and for surviving spouses who are taking care of children under 16 or who are disabled. Also, the surviving spouse would have had to have been married to the deceased spouse for at least 9 months, except in the case where those spouses' deaths were due to an accident or as a result of U.S. military services. So that seems pretty straightforward. But of course, there are always going to be complexities and nuances because, let's face it, families can be complicated and nuanced. And to that end, one way that things can get a bit tricky is for households who have been divorced, because there are some specific criteria that have to be met to qualify based on a divorced spouse's benefits. First is that if there is a divorce, in order to claim survivor's benefits, the living spouse would not be able to remarry prior to the age of 60 years old and still be eligible for those survivor benefits. If you are over the age of 60, though, then this rule does not apply, and you can marry and still get the previous spouse's survivor benefits. Another aspect of this is if you do remarry before the age of 60 and are not able to claim survivor's benefits, but if that second marriage ends, then you will be able to regain those eligibility to those first spouse's survivor's benefits. One last thing that can be a very difficult situation that arises from couples who are both on Social Security is the significant drop in benefits that can occur when one spouse dies. This is because in a household where two people are getting Social Security, one lower and one higher, if the higher benefit individual dies, then that two-income household now becomes a one-income household. This is because once a spouse dies, the surviving spouse may either keep their existing Social Security benefits, if usually they are higher, or they will start to automatically receive the higher of the two monthly Social Security benefits. But they are not able to keep both. In fact, in the month of death, that additional Social Security check, should it come, actually has to be returned to Social Security. This can oftentimes be a major hit to a household who has been living for years or maybe even decades and built a life around having two Social Security benefits, but are now down to one, the larger of the two. So overall, I think obviously that Social Security program, it has a huge benefit. It has literally kept millions, if not tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, including many of my family. It has helped older Americans to live their lives in dignity once they are no longer able to work, and it helps younger people like myself and people even younger as well. Because it means once parents or older family members are too old to work, they don't have to rely as much on us for their daily care and living. Of course, the program is flawed, and we see that now more than ever. I mean, it's really sort of outdated. Some of the rules and calculators for benefits and mortality and stuff like that, it hasn't been updated since before there was color TV. But ultimately, it is a good program. It is just sad to see that right now, with all this debt ceiling fighting and political bickering, that Social Security gets stuck in as a bargaining chip, even though it is a lifeline for older Americans, for younger Americans, and really for Americans who have not yet begun to exist yet, but they will. That is the beauty of the program, and it is exactly the reason why it needs to be protected at all costs, at least for the next 100 years or so. Because if I'm going to meet Edie's oldest person in America record, I'm definitely going to need some help from Social Security. I'm coming for your record, Edie. All right, so that's it for today's Michael's Matters, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, if you liked it, if you found it interesting, if you found it helpful, or hey, if you found it useful, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because it does, again, really help the channel to grow, and we're super thankful for that, but also because you get updates when our newest and most informative videos become available. So, for Michael's Matters, I'm Michael, hoping that you take care of yourself, take care of others, have a happy